Following the Hamas attack on Israel, Donald Trump warned that we're closer to World War III than we've ever been. He was joined by Elon Musk, who said this week that we're sleepwalking our way into World War III. Last week, Mitch McConnell called China, Russia, and Iran the new axis of evil and declared that in many ways the world is more in danger today than it's been in his lifetime. How likely is World War III? How concerned should you be? What does it depend on? Who does it depend on? And what are the biggest risks? Hi, I'm David Wu, a former IMF economist and Wall Street strategist with a 20-year track record of making actionable predictions about the big stories shaping our world tomorrow. Some people believe the Hamas attack on Israel is the start of Armageddon, which according to the New Testament is the last battle between good and evil before the Day of Judgment. You don't have to be a political scientist to realize that the fact that religion is mixed with politics in this war makes it especially toxic. Zionism was founded on the idea of the return of Jews to their homeland. For many Jews, the creation of the state of Israel fulfilled the prophecy in the Hebrew Bible that God will one day bring back the people of Israel from exiles. The return of the Jews to the land of Israel is also central to Christian belief. Many Christians believe that the second coming of Christ would happen only after the Jewish diaspora has returned to Israel, secured a final victory against its enemies, and rebuilt the Temple of Jerusalem. Like the Christians and some Jews, Muslims also believe in the idea of the final judgment day, but they differ in the way it will be brought about. According to the Hadith, words and deeds attributed to the Prophet Muhammad, the hour of resurrection will not come until you fight the Jews. The Jews will hide behind rocks or trees. Then the stones or trees will call, "Oh Muslim, servant of Allah, there's a Jew behind me. Come and kill him." Prophecies sometimes become reality because they can be self-fulfilling when enough people believe in them. Hamas cast its attack on Israel on October 7th as a holy war. Last Friday, the Palestinian Ministry of Religious Affairs instruction sheet for all preachers quoted Muhammad's call to kill Jews. Some Christians see Hamas' attack on October 7th as the first sally of the Antichrist. According to the New Testament, the second coming will be preceded by disease, earthquakes, and wars. Whether Republican Senator Lindsey Graham is right or not to call the Israel-Hamas war a religious war, there's no denying that it is touching a raw nerve with all three main Western religions. This alone makes the conflict more combustible and less predictable than the Russia-Ukraine war. To get a World War III going, we will need a regional war first. Hamas can provoke a regional war, but it cannot start one. For a regional war to break out, Hamas backers Iran will have to directly join the war against Israel. Iran has denied any involvement in the Hamas attack on Israel, even though a report by the Wall Street Journal on October 8th quoted unnamed senior members of Hamas and Hezbollah as saying that Iran not only helped plan the attack, but gave the go-ahead for it. Another sign of Iran's increased brazenness is a string of attacks against U.S. personnel at various bases in Iraq and Syria since October 17th by Iranian-backed Shia militias. U.S. Central Command told NBC News this week that 20 American personnel sustained minor injuries on October 18th when at least 2 suicide attack drones targeted Al-Tanf military base. On October 23rd, National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby said, "We know that Iran is closely monitoring these events and in some cases actively facilitating these attacks and spurring on others who might want to exploit the conflict for their own good or for that of Iran." What can these attacks tell us about Iran's calculations right now? What is clear is that Tehran is taking advantage of the reluctance of the US to be dragged into a regional war. In other words, Tehran is banking on America's lack of appetite for going to war with Iran. And Tehran has been right so far. The Biden administration until now has refrained from taking actions against these attacks by the militias despite facing increasing political pressure to do so. American deterrence, at least when it comes to Iran, has weakened considerably under the Biden administration. In August, Biden agreed on the transfer of $6 billion of Iranian funds that had been frozen in South Korea under sanctions in exchange for the release of 5 U.S. citizens detained by Tehran. This was on the back of the transfer of $10 billion frozen in Iraq in June. Since the start of the Biden administration, Iranian oil exports have increased by 400%. This is despite the discovery in March by the IAEA of uranium particles enriched up to 83.7% in Iran's underground Fordow nuclear site. Meanwhile, Robert Malley, Biden's special envoy for Iran, the chief architect for resurrecting the Iran deal, has been placed on unpaid leave by the State Department since June, with his security clearance suspended over allegation of compromising classified information. Given the Biden administration has taken a very tough stance on China and Russia, it is puzzling why it's been pandering to Iran that is sending weapons to Russia while brutally suppressing dissent at home. Human rights groups are investigating the killing of more than 500 people, including 69 children, during the Iranian protests in 2022. The only explanation I can come up with is that it is a knee-jerk reaction to implement policies opposite to those of the Trump administration that, as you recall, walked away from the Iran deal, applied tough sanctions on Iran, and assassinated the head of Iran's Quds Force, Qasem Soleimani. Whatever the reason, we can reasonably assume that U.S. actions, or rather inactions, under Biden have emboldened Iran. This could explain the unrestrained attack on Israel on October 7th and the attacks on U.S. personnel in the Middle East. Will the U.S. finally put its foot down? I don't know. But what I do know is that whatever is the probability of a regional war, the biggest risk is that Iran makes a miscalculation, go too far, and trigger an overreaction by the US and or Israel. Even if we get a regional war, it is not a given that it will lead to World War III. To get World War III, the superpowers will have to decide to go to war with each other. World War III is dangerous because not only the US, China, and Russia are all nuclear powers, but the nuclear powers may choose to use nuclear weapons over accepting defeat. This is why, by definition, a World War III will not end well. But what is the chance of World War III? In theory, because there will be no winners in World War III, the three superpowers have no incentive to start one. This is especially the case with Russia, that has more limited resources than either the US or China to fight and sustain a total war. World War III also offers less upside for the Russians. China might hope to gain control of Taiwan, but the Russians have already the upper hand in the war in Ukraine. With the Ukrainian counteroffensive that started in June stalling, Russian forces have gone on the offensive over the past few weeks. Russian forces are now encircling the town of Avdiivka in the Donetsk region that boasted of having the strongest defenses along the entire front line. This week, Russian forces took control of the strategically important landfill north of Avdiivka and advanced to the railroad line north of Avdiivka. Even more important is the fact that the Russian military announced this week that its air defense system shot down 2 long-range US-made ATACMS missiles that many military experts thought were game changers for Ukraine. All these developments reinforce the view that Russia has little to gain by starting World War III and has everything to lose. If this is obvious to me, it should be pretty obvious to people inside the Biden administration. But after Biden's speech on October 19th on his return from Israel, I'm not so sure. Biden's decision to link Putin directly with Hamas in his speech is making World War III more rather than less likely. Equating the Russia-Ukraine war with the Hamas attack on Israel, Biden is asking Congress for more money for Ukraine. Ironically, of the $105 billion Biden is asking Congress for Israel and Ukraine, less than 15% will go to Israel, and most of it will go to Ukraine. The $61 billion Biden is asking for Ukraine is more than double the $24 billion he was asking before the Hamas attack that Congress has yet to approve. I may be missing something, but it looks to me like Biden is using the Hamas attack on Israel as an opportunity to double down on the Ukraine war that is so critical for his re-election bid. If Putin believes that Biden is going to double down on Ukraine, he may decide to take Iran's side in the Middle East crisis. In this respect, I agree wholeheartedly with Elon Musk, who said this week that to avoid WW3, we need to figure out peace in Ukraine and restore normal relations with Russia. But what is the chance of that happening before the 2024 US elections? Not very good. But there was one good piece of news this week for people who don't want to see WW3. Mike Johnson became the Speaker of the US House of Representatives this week. A former constitutional lawyer and a conservative radio host, Johnson won the Speaker race with unanimous backing from House Republicans. Johnson has many advantages. He doesn't have a high national profile. He's an evangelical Christian. He has the support of Trump. He has the reputation of being a hard worker. He's well liked. He was described as a friend to all and an enemy to none by the Republican Conference chairwoman during the nomination process. With the Republicans in control of the House, for Biden to double down on Ukraine, he now will have to go through Mike Johnson. Johnson voted against two different appropriation bills that provided aid to Ukraine, one in 2022 and another one last month over concerns about the lack of transparency of the $100 billion that the US has already sent to Ukraine. My guess is that Biden will get some money for Ukraine, but it will be much less than what he's asking for. The best way to stop the war in Ukraine is to stop money from going to the war. My bet is that a united Republican caucus in the House will now be in a better position to help end the war. As I argued last week, there are three main scenarios for the Israel-Hamas war. 1. A ceasefire followed by a return to the status quo before October 7. 2. A regional war. 3. A prolonged localized conflict. I attach a 10% chance to scenario 1, 30% chance to scenario 2, and 60% chance to scenario 3. Where could I go wrong? More specifically, what are the upside risks to the 30% probability that I'm attaching to a regional war that has the potential to morph into WW3? In this video, I've outlined the two main risks. 1. Emboldened by US inaction, Iran goes too far and trigger an overreaction by the US and or Israel. 2. The Israel-Hamas war allows Biden to double down on Ukraine. As I explained, I'm less concerned about the second risk than I am about the first. Given these two risks are not totally independent, if I'm wrong about the second risk, it will increase the chance of the first risk. If you got something out of this program, please hit like and subscribe to my free YouTube channel. Let me know what you think by posting your comments on the video. If you want to learn more about my investment strategy, come visit us at davidwunbound.com.